Hey guys, welcome to another video with your host Firestone, and today we will be doing a technology video. And today we will be installing two of these 16GB RAM sticks into my computer. Now, a quick disclaimer before we begin: do not attempt trying this unless you know what you're doing, because doing this can be very risky and can result in you breaking your laptop. That goes for really any device. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to be unscrewing the cover off of this laptop. And I'm going to cut the footage, but before I unscrew the laptop, I do want to say, remember the last video I made about taking apart a laptop? Well, I realized one thing that I've done wrong, and this has been told to me by many people who've reviewed my video, is that I was not using the correct screwdriver. Yep, I needed a smaller screwdriver than the one I had. It is definitely important that you get an appropriate size screwdriver to unscrew a laptop, because you can damage the screws, and that is what I exactly did in my last laptop disassembling video. Alrighty, with the case off, we can see the inside of this laptop. As you can see here, we have the CPU and GPU fans right here. I believe the CPU is under here somewhere. The GPU is over here. But we're not going to access that today. Over here, we have the SSD and whatever this is. We have a spare hard drive, which I installed earlier this week. I should have recorded it, but I was already struggling enough. Over here we have the battery, which is a little bit eerie that it's a little bit weird here in the middle, where feels like there's a crack. Hopefully that's not the case. And what we're going to work on is the memory, which is under here, which, as noted, we're going to be doing some more unscrewing. Actually, there's only one screw to this, and it's right here. So, let me unscrew it, and we'll uncover the RAM. One thing I forgot to mention is make sure you keep all your screws in an area where you can keep track of them. As you can see, I have all 11 screws it took for me to take off the case, and one little mini screw from what it took to take off the RAM case over there. Definitely keep track of them. You're going to need them. And over here, we have the memory. So, for the memory, we're going to be upgrading it from 8 gigabytes to 16 gigabyte sticks. So, overall, we're going to go from 16 gigabytes of RAM to 32. So, one thing to mention, whenever purchasing RAM, make sure you have RAM of the same type. If you put in two different RAM sticks, then it will eat up more RAM, because there's two different brands of RAM sticks. And yeah, there's a whole lot of logic behind that I don't care to explain right now. But main lesson is, make sure if you replace the RAM to order two RAM of the same type, or however amount of RAM you're planning on replacing. So for taking the current RAM off, I'm probably going to need to cut footage, but we're going to need to pull back on these tabs, and then after that, this piece here should lift up. So now that I pulled back on these tabs, the RAM lifted up, so you can just pull it right out of there. Just like that. And now to put in the new RAM. Okay, make sure you have it correctly. Yeah, as you can see, it mounts in a certain way. You have to make sure the pins are aligned here. That's one thing we'll be talking about later on, is the different types of RAM. which I will cover whenever we get done this at the end, is the different types of RAM that there are, and that you'll have to make sure you get the same type of RAM whenever you go to purchase new RAM. Because if you don't, then, well, you're kind of screwed. Obviously, don't try to force something. Like, don't try to force RAM into a slot because that can end up damaging the motherboard, and that will be a new replacement in of itself. So now that we got the new RAM in, as you can see, well, I had a little struggle with it. So now that everything seems to be working normally, I am going to put this system back together and we are going to run it. Okay, now for the nerve-wracking part. Firing this thing up and making sure it boots properly. So one thing we can do is we can try to hit F4 or F2. I think it's F2 on this computer to access the BIOS to make sure the memory cards are in. Okay, now to access the BIOS, I believe you have to hit F2 on your keyboard to access the BIOS. And you can only do this upon startup. You cannot do it while the computer is running. It's only whenever it's starting up. Okay, so after putting in the RAM, we can now see that the installed RAM is now 32 gigs. So just the amount of RAM I need. So yeah, before I was able to get this computer running, for some odd reason, I don't know what in the world it was, but the computer was stuck on the loading screen. So if something like that happens, if your computer's stuck in the loading screen, make sure that everything is installed properly, because that can be an issue too if that's the case. If it's stuck on a loading screen, that something might not be installed right. So make sure you go through everything and that everything's installed correctly, and make sure that I should have said this before I started, but make sure that the computer, or make sure if you're not exactly sure, actually, no matter what, you should make sure and take a picture of your motherboard before you begin any sort of task, so that way you remember where everything goes, just in case something were to happen. So yeah, I will be back in a few seconds, and we can talk more about RAM. Alright guys, a little review over what was covered in this video. So, there has been a lot actually behind the video, and I will be explaining it in these slides that are coming up. So, let's get started. So, like I have mentioned earlier in the video, there are different types of RAM used in laptops. So, whenever you go to change or add onto your RAM, you want to make sure you get a RAM that will work with your computer and will fit in with your motherboard. As you can see here, if you look at the pins on the RAM that is shown here, you can see that it is a little bit different for each RAM. So that that's why you need to make sure you get the right type of RAM, because this will not fit into a computer that is only meant for this type of RAM, because of the placement of this. Yeah, just mainly because of the placement of this hole. It's mainly what it is. So yeah, there are many different types of RAMs that is that are used. These are just some examples, and RAM that I definitely encounter a lot when working with computers, or with laptops in this example. So yeah. So this was the main issue when booting up the computer. So whenever you boot up a computer, such as Acer, for example, if normally if you were to boot up a computer and for whatever reason the RAM isn't inserted correctly, normally you would get some type of message. You would normally hear beeping or lights would flicker on your keyboard indicating what is wrong. But in this case, I was stuck on the loading screen. So this might just be with Acer. I guess it depends what brand of computer you get. That if there is something wrong with the hardware, you'll be stuck on the loading screen. So yeah. So definitely if you are stuck on the loading screen, definitely check back on your hardware. Make sure everything's inserted correctly. Just like I said here in this text, that whenever I went to boot up the computer for the first time, the it froze, and that was because I didn't have the RAM inserted all the way. That's definitely a common issue, is making sure you have your RAM inserted all the way into the slot. Obviously, don't force the RAM into the slot because you might break the slot, but make sure that it is inserted correctly and completely. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you have not. I hope you guys learned from this video too, just as much as I have, because I normally don't work with laptops much. As you've probably seen in a few of my videos, I am self-taught in working with laptops. I've been taught to work with computer desktops, or computer towers, as some people might call them, but not mainly with laptops. So this was definitely the experience for me. This was definitely an experience for me. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed. My name's Firestone. Subscribe to me if you haven't. I'll see y'all later. Peace out.